What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and today we had an update to the Tournament Rules and Guidelines document from the KeyForging website. I had to put this up earlier, but I was playing KeyForge until just a short time ago, so I was doing the hobby. What were you doing? Anyway, let's take a look. I did peruse this a bit earlier, so I kind of know what we're getting into already. But yeah, it looks like Tournament Rules and Guidelines update and Deck Ascension announcement. Ghost Galaxy is hard at work delivering the KeyForge 2025 organized play plan, with store championships nearing their conclusion and the Vault Tour scheduled to kick off in April in Rochester, New York, hosted by Millennium Games. Before Vault Tour 2025 begins, there are several key changes that we've been making to the Tournament Rules and Guidelines document that govern these events. Let's take a look at the updates. We'll actually go through it too because they red text all the new stuff, but we'll read the article first and then we'll pop over there. Official KeyForge tournaments are regulated by our tournament rules and guidelines. This framework applies to store championships, vault tours, national championships, and the world championships. The TRG serves multiple purposes. It details the various roles within a KeyForge event, establishes a code of conduct that all participants are required to follow, specifies the materials that players must utilize during tournaments, offers guidelines for judges, and defines official tournament structure and formats. Today's updates include updated definitions. Several concepts and definitions that were not present in the document have been added, including the definition of tournament structure, registration, and the KeyForge Master Vault. Seems pretty standard. Update to references and note-taking rules. Clarification on the use of printed translations of reference materials was added. Guidance on the use of electronic devices for accessing official references was also added. I'll have to look at that in more detail. I haven't read the actual update. Added official tournament structure section. Tournament structure has been removed from the rules for each tournament format to its own section. This contains the rules for qualifying rounds and guidance for play-in rounds and top cut sizes. Yeah, because they use basically the same rules in all of them, so previously they had them detailed in each one. Now they just kind of put them together, sounds like, which, good. Added Deck Ascension section. Tournament Legality has a new Deck Ascension section which will remove some competitive decks from high-level tournaments. This is a large change that has some additional context below. Let's look at that additional context. People have been talking about this for a while. I think this is a excellent change. It's going to help so much in some ways, but I think also it maybe isn't enough. But it's a start. So they know there's a problem and they're doing something about it, and at least that's a start. Archons Ascend. One change cannot be introduced without providing additional context and insight into the decision. Deck Ascension. Players have expressed to us a desire to limit decks in our premier level events due to the concerns that certain decks dominate the metagame. There have also been concerns that multiple players qualifying for the World Championships with a single deck contradicts KeyForge's core principle of deck uniqueness, and further, that testing teams have an unfair advantage by sharing decks easily. We agree, and we've set out to solve these concerns. So, many of you know this is in direct response to last year's tournament season, where we did in fact have multiple people qualify for Worlds in Archon using the same deck from the same team that they were able to share around across multiple Vault Tours. Most people thought that probably wasn't fair, and it seems like GG agrees. So that's not going to be a thing anymore. What this does not mean, from what I've read so far, and we'll go over the whole thing together, but what this does not mean is that once a deck ascends, it does not come back into rotation again. They will come back into rotation again from the sound of it. It'll just not be until next year's tournament season, which I guess is a fair minimum, but I think some of us were really hoping that decks would ascend permanently and just be out of the meta in perpetuity going forward so that we could increase diversity even more in future years. But that does not seem to be what they went with, but we'll go through it all so that we can kind of parse it out together. KeyForge decks are fixed entities, making metagame adjustments more complex than just banning cards, which is something traditional card games are able to do with ease. In KeyForge, card bans could negatively impact many unsold products, creating bad opening experiences for players or devaluing decks they already own. Absolutely. I don't think anybody really wanted to call for bans outside of Alliance. In Archon, I don't think anybody was really calling for bans, but I do think there was definitely some calls for erratas, or at the very least, some method of removing the most problematically competitive things from the metagame, which is what they're trying to do here. To address the concerns of the community, but also protect the value of their decks, the next best option is a season-limited rotation plan. This is the idea of temporarily prohibiting decks that have achieved great success in high-level play. This is what we call Deck Ascension. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of Deck Ascension. Deck Ascension can be succinctly described as any deck utilized in an Archon or Alliance tournament that enables a player to qualify for the World's Championship will be marked as Ascended for that season, along with any deck that achieves first place, regardless of whether the player qualified in a prior tournament. Comprehensive rules are included in the TRG update, but the highlights are as follows. So the two things to know here. If you qualify for Worlds with a deck in either Archon or Alliance, that deck cannot qualify, or I don't think even be used, in another Alliance or Archon tournament for the rest of the season. And if you win in an Alliance or Archon tournament, even if you've already qualified for Worlds using a different deck, the deck you used there will also ascend and not be available for use until next year. Okay? So those are the two ways that this happens. We're going to highlight it point by point. Decks that place first at a Vault Tour or National Championship in the Archon or Alliance format will ascend regardless of any other situation. Decks that qualify a player for the World Championship at a Vault Tour or National Championship will ascend, regardless of what placement they were. So every Vault Tour or National Championship tournament will qualify the first and second player, so this will often mean that the second place deck will ascend, and so will the first place. However, qualifications can pass down if the players in first and second place have already qualified. So it's possible that a 4th through 8th place deck ascends, because invites can go all the way down to 8th place, right? So it is possible that the top 2 players will both have already gotten their invites. The top deck will get removed, and so will the 3rd and 4th place, potentially. And yeah, so that's a thing to keep in mind. Ascended decks cannot be used at a Vault Tour National Championship tournament for the remainder of 2025 in both Archon and Alliance formats. So even if you ascended in Archon, you can't switch it to Alliance. If you ascend in Alliance, you can't switch it to Archon. Once it has ascended, it is out of the rotation for the rest of the season, regardless of where it ascended. Ascended decks can be used at the World Championship or open tournaments at KeyForge Celebration. I wish they excluded them from open tournaments. at KeyForge Celebration. But I definitely understand them being allowed at Worlds. That's the top table of the game. That should definitely be allowed. But because it is allowed, that's why I wish that Ascensions for Worlds were permanent. Maybe not for Vault Tours, but like if you get first at Worlds, that deck now ascends and can't be used for any Vault Tours or any competitive play ever again for the rest of the life of KeyForge. That deck has achieved the highest honor in the land and must now step aside to allow other decks to have a chance to do the same. But I digress. That is not listed here as a thing. A list of Ascended decks will appear on a brand new page called the Hall of the Ascended, which we'll take a look at, but I think it should be empty right now. A special deck accolade will be assigned to Ascended decks to make distinguishing them in the Master Vault easier. And also, you'll be able to add the accolade if you want to say, hey, my deck ascended. And it'll probably also get an accolade for winning whatever tournament it won. Unless it came in second place or lower. But yeah, you get it. It should be mentioned that Sealed is not included on purpose. We view opening a great Sealed deck for use in a later Archon or Alliance tournament as part of the essential magic of KeyForge. Also, these decks already can't be used in another Sealed tournament because of the very nature of how Sealed works. I agree. Sealed is pretty much the quintessential KeyForge experience. Because it's all about playing something you've never seen before to the best of your ability on the first blush interaction, which is basically KeyForge at its most essential. And then, yeah, if you want to take it on and play it in another tournament, then that's great, and that's basically the same as any other Archon or Alliance deck. So, no, that makes perfect sense to me. All right, they end this with talking about the Vault Tours. Many of the changes introduced to the TRG are in preparation for Ghost Galaxy's flagship KeyForge tournament series, the Vault Tour. Please join us at these wonderful celebrations of the world's most unique card game starting April 25th, 2025. I'm going to be there. You should be there. Be there, be square. Additional information, ticketing links, hotel booking links, and details on our venue partners can be found on our Vault Tour 2025 information page. Just click the link below and we'll see you on tour. You sure will. Okay, a couple other things I want to look at. So here's the new tournament rules and guidelines as of April 2nd, 2025. Red text. Adherence to the TRG provides a uniform playing experience for KeyForge events and provides an objective standard by which tournaments will be played. It also allows for disputes that may arise at different events to be resolved in a fair and consistent manner. Neat. What else red text? Registration. A period of time prior to the start of a tournament or other organized activity where players check in with event staff and confirm their desire and eligibility to participate in the tournament or activity. The event organizers determine the duration of the registration. Registration time must be of sufficient length to reasonably accommodate all players. Event organizers should include all start times, including registration start times and tournament start times, in all communication prior to the events. Perfect. Tournament structure. Tournament structure consists of the rules and process by which a tournament progresses, including match pairings and table assignments. Official KeyForge tournaments are run using the playstyle 2LO, or 2 loss out, tournament structure described in this document. Casual tournaments may use whatever tournament structure is dictated by the event organizer. Perfect. Competitive season. The time frame within a calendar year during which official KeyForge tournaments take place. The start of each year's competitive season coincides with the first day of the first official tournament of that year. The competitive season ends on the last day of that year's KeyForge World Championship event. Makes perfect sense. KeyForge Master Vault. The KeyForge Master Vault, found at KeyForgeGame.com, is the official database of KeyForge players and the decks they own. The KeyForge Master Vault is considered an official reference document. Something tells me that's going to matter. Spectator. Media spectators. A person or group providing media coverage of tournament or event. When providing coverage for a match, media may interact with players prior to the commencement of play in a match, but only to gather relevant information for coverage, such as player name, and deck houses. Judges may require media to limit these interactions to maintain tournament continuity and satisfactory pacing. Live commentary must be audible to players in a match that is being covered. Must be inaudible. Oh, thank God. I was like, what? They have to hear it. No, must be inaudible to players in a match that is being covered. Commentary must remain respectful and refrain from using harsh language, making overly critical statements about players' actions, or covering topics that are not relevant to the match. Makes perfect sense. No updates to the code of conducts. Special accommodations. Special accommodations are any specific needs a player has to allow them to participate in a tournament. They include now that their needs during registration get accommodated, including the determination that it is not feasible to accommodate the request. That's a good inclusion, because sometimes you just can't accommodate a request, and you need to be able to say, I'm sorry, I just can't do that. References and note-taking. Players cannot take notes or reference third-party information during a match unless a judge or marshal has pre-authorized such activity for a specific purpose, such as viewing translations of game rules or deck lists. That's a big deal because they're adding new features to playstyle and to the Master Vault to make that easier. So being able to reference that during a tournament is a thing they need to talk about. Use of any electronic device is to access official documents, tournament software, the KeyForge Master Vault, or assistive technology necessary for a special accommodation may be allowed at the discretion of a judge or marshal. If allowed, the device's screen should be visible to both players while the device is being used. A judge or marshal may require a player to discontinue use of their device at any time. Makes perfect sense. I don't want to go over the official tournament structure stuff. It's the 2LO. We've talked about this. We know this. They just put it all in one place instead of splitting it up among the different formats. Qualifying rounds and top cut rounds are 45 minutes. Final is best of 3. Each is individually 45 minutes. Yep. Nothing big changing there. Archon registration. The Archon deck must be complete, unmodified, and presented with its original Archon identity card. Yep, got to keep your ID cards, boys. Alliance, not seeing any red text. Restricted list isn't changing again. Sealed. Oh, the event organizer determines which KeyForge set will be used for the tournament and the maximum number of decks, 1, 2, or 3. each player may use to create their final deck. A player may choose to use fewer sealed decks than the maximum. Absolutely. After this announcement, players have 30 minutes to create their decks. Deck creation is an official stage of the tournament. We're canonizing the 30-minute build time. Okay, I mean, it's been plenty enough time, so I'm not worried about it. During the best-of-3 series for the final match, players may perform deck calibration between games with oversight from a judge or marshal. Each deck calibration between games of a final match must be completed within 5 minutes. Ooh, that's actually really cool. I don't know if that was there before. I mean, it obviously wasn't because it's red. Discovery and Vault Masters 25 have been added to the legal sets that can be played. Not surprising at all. Okay, here's the official section on Deck Ascension. Let's go through this because this is the official wording of how it works. Deck Ascension is designed to promote a wider range of KeyForge decks in high-level tournament play and to reduce the likelihood of a single deck enabling multiple players to qualify for the World Championship in the same competitive season. When a player participates in a World Championship qualifying Archon or Alliance tournament and places first, the deck used by the player is ascended for that competitive season. When a player earns a qualification to the World's Championship through an Archon or Alliance tournament, the deck used by the player is ascended for that competitive season. If an Alliance deck is ascended, each deck that is used to create that deck is also ascended for that competitive season. Ascended decks are prohibited from being used in further World Championship qualifying events for the remainder of the competitive season. Only decks participating in the Archon and Alliance official formats are subject to Deck Ascension. Each time a deck ascends, it receives a special deck accolade, which can be viewed in the KeyForge Master Vault. Ascended decks can be used in KeyForge World Championship tournaments. I don't actually see a thing here that says you can use it in the Open tournament. Based on what this says here, I don't think you can. Maybe it's supposed to say that you can, but I don't think it can, because the definition of the definition of a competitive season says that the first day coincides with the first day of the official tournament of that year, and it ends on the last day of that year's KeyForge World Championship event. And the only exception that this has is for World Championship tournaments. But the Open tournament is not a World Championship tournament. At least I don't think so. So I want to know which it is. I really, really hope that this is the intended wording and that you actually can't use Ascended decks in the Open tournament at all. If for some reason, like let's say you win 3 different Vault Tours, and so you have 3 Ascended decks, but you can only play one of them at Worlds, and so you give one of the other Ascended decks away to one of your team members who didn't win a ticket to Worlds, and they can play it in the Open tournament and hopefully get a qualification for Worlds next year. I still think that's probably not okay. I still think that's probably a no. You should probably have to wait until the first set of Vault Tours in the next year to be able to do that. Only because the Open tournament at KFC, while it is a qualifier for the coming year and not the current year, still feels like it should be considered part of the same tournament season. And if we're using tournament seasons as the sunset for when a deck can be used, then we should commit to that and be consistent about it. I believe that once you win a world tournament for Archon or Alliance, your decks should be ascended permanently and just not allowed back into the deck pool at all, because they've won the highest accolade in the land. You have won the greatest prize in all of KeyForge. Congratulations. Now, for the sake of variety and for the sake of giving other people an opportunity to sit in that seat of honor as you got to, you should gracefully accept your many accolades, including great prizes and genuine actual deck accolades, and say, okay, I won. This deck is now retired. That doesn't seem unfair to me, but I understand why it might not be a super popular opinion. But this is a good thing. I'm happy about it. I want to look at the Hall of Ascension. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's empty. We could read it, but we don't need to. So, yeah. Good stuff all around. I'm satisfied. It definitely addresses a problem that we had. I do kind of wish Ghost Galaxy was a little more proactive about addressing problems before they're a really big problem. Because it was a really big problem last year, but at least they're not letting it happen 2 years in a row, probably. This might make Grim Reminders a little less dominant in this coming season. I wouldn't hold my breath, but we'll see. And to be honest, I'm not super plugged into the tournament meta, actually, realistically anyway, so maybe I'm just completely wrong. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. So until next time, later, Archons.